Technica's Technipod. I'm Sreya, a brand organizer for 2025.
And I'm Faith Kamising, Inclusive Communities Co-Director for 2025. And today we're joined here with Elias Gonzalez. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Elias Gonzalez. I'm a lecturer at the Computer Science Department, along with the Curriculum Innovation Lead for Breakthrough Tech. I teach lots of things, and mostly the introductory 131, 132.
That was a very humble introduction. For all of our viewers out there, Elias has a 4.42 on Planet Terp, which is our reviewing system.
I thought you were going to tell me my GPA. I was going to say it definitely wasn't that.
I know your GPA because you showed it to us before.
Okay, gotcha.
But he has really good ratings on Planet Terp. He's such an amazing teacher. I had him in the past. And even though you're super humble, Elias is award-winning. He has so many amazing recognitions from the school and also just from his students. So yeah, with that, thank you for introducing yourself, and we're going to get right into the questions for today. So our first question for you is, how did you get interested in computer science? Are there any activities that made you choose tech?
So actually, before we started recording, we were talking about siblings and stuff like that, and I can actually pinpoint starting in computer science was mostly from my sister. In high school, I went to a school that had a magnet program. I was not in the magnet program myself because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And my sister was like, you got an open spot in your schedule. Take this class in computer science and you can teach me how to make Tumblr themes. And she thought computer science was like HTML and CSS, which is like part of it, but not really exactly what the class is about. And I hated it. It was like my least favorite class. I didn't understand anything. But ultimately what I landed on was it's a class and a field where it's what you make of it at the end. In many ways, I wasn't somebody that was like super committal as to what I wanted to do after I graduated college. And I felt that computer science was one of those things that both challenges you, but also allows you to apply that to whatever field you're interested in. And at the time, I was like, maybe I'll go into engineering. I was really big into cars at the time, or healthcare. Little did I know I'd choose the least paying of those three in becoming a teacher. But I knew that like it would open up a lot of opportunities, whether it was in like a, SWE job or something else. And that was, attractive to me. But again, the main thing I think was just, it was the most genuinely challenging class that wasn't like a calc class where I often felt that, you would take an exam in calc and it was the exact same thing as the practice test with a twist. But the twist is not justifiable anyway. It was just like, we're just going to make this harder. Versus computer science, at least when it comes to like the courses I teach, the hard thing is something I can justify, that it's like, somebody might enter in null instead of 0 and you have to, handle that and all that sort of stuff. So that to me is just much more interesting. So just made more sense for me.
Yeah. Shout out older sister.
Exactly, yeah.
Did you get to help her make Tumblr websites?
No.
Oh.
Because I learned Java in that class. Well, but I was exposed to Java in that class, so I didn't learn HTML and CSS until much later. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that can be a little birthday present moment.
Like. Yeah, maybe. I could do it now. Too bad RIP Tumblr is not the same anymore.
So you talked about going to a magnet high school, or you had a magnet program in the high school, but how was it being minority in like a high school with the magnet program, and like how was it working with like other non-magnet school students?
Yeah, so it was pretty humbling in many ways, and it exposed me to a lot of, unfortunately, what I would experience even when I was at the University of Maryland when it came to computer science. It was sort of exacerbated by the fact that I ended up in some of the magnet courses when I was in high school, but I was in the classes with students younger than me, so I was older and also not in the program, and I didn't know anybody, and nobody really talked to me. I can think of like maybe one or two people that like said hi to me or said anything to me. To be fair, I would show up to class very sweaty from playing soccer during lunch, but that wasn't always the excuse. But I had a teacher who really valued me and knew that even though I was struggling or I didn't feel super welcome, to continue on with that. And I don't know if I would have continued if that had not been the case. If I didn't have somebody advocating for me, telling me that like it's okay for you not to understand something or not to do well in a quiz. Persistence is most of the battle, especially in computer science. And I felt really supported in that way. And so, I definitely felt a lot of like personal pressure, a lot of, how do I say this? Like I felt very unwelcome in many cases. But I knew that, the fact that I'm sitting in that seat, and this is what I like to tell my own students, is like, you're sitting in the seat for a reason. Whether you feel welcome or not is important for your own like mental health, but ultimately persist in it because you're here for a reason. You're in that seat for a reason. And so I couldn't compare to students who had their parents, working at NIH or working at all these different, my parents are construction workers. My mom cleans houses. I had no other experience when it came to college. So it was important to have advocates, which is sort of fueled what I hope to do now that I'm at the University of Maryland.
No, I can definitely see that you're trying to pass that on to your students, which is really amazing.
I actually had a story that I wanted to share, kind of along those lines. My next question was originally going to be, was there anyone in tech that really helped you grow into feeling like you belong? Because I remember you talking about going to a magnet school and feeling out of place. And a little bit of background for our viewers is Elias and I go way back. So he ran the summer program that I took the summer before my freshman year of college. So imagine this, everyone. It is summer of 2022. Elias just ran a workshop about allyship in tech where you talked about that experience, actually. And inspired by that, I went to your office and I wanted to ask a few follow-up questions, but it ended up turning into a breakdown session where I was just crying and confiding in Elias about what it felt like to feel like you truly didn't belong in tech, or that I'm so behind in comparison to my peers. But what you did after that, I think, really changed the trajectory of my comfortability in tech, because you sat me down and you were like, okay, let's make an 8-year is crazy, 4-year plan for college, and let me show you how you can actually even graduate early if you want. You're not behind in tech. And you gave me the most amazing pep talk that, I'm not gonna lie, I think it changed the chemistry of my brain. And after that, I feel like I was able to walk in tech with more confidence. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that experience. So as you're talking about how that's your goal for tech, I just want to let you know that
thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
You've been able to do that for the past however many years.
And I would say you're putting a lot of, how do I say that? A lot of the onus of that on me, but ultimately it's just, most of the students just need to recognize that, again, you are valued and you're here for a reason. And that's, you're often fighting against yourself when it comes to feeling, there are obviously external pressures, but part of it is finding the value of yourself in the program. And that's hard to do if you don't have allies. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with the teacher that you were talking about in high school?
I did for a bit. I haven't in a moment, but I ended up teaching at Blair, which was the high school I went to. And so I talked with him and I had lunch with him a couple times and talked to him. But I think he knew I was, it was really him. And there was other teachers as well, but definitely him that was very valuable for me. So shout out Mr. Fowler for that. Yeah.
Having all of these teachers, or I guess these specific teachers who made you feel so welcome and comfortable just getting into this field, is that what led you to wanting to teach specifically entry-level classes? Or how has that been part of your brand kind of as a professor or teacher?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to when I taught high school. So I taught high school for roughly 5 years before I was full-time here at Maryland. And what I really was passionate about is teaching other students like myself, like you're saying, that didn't have the experience, were possibly first generation, even if they weren't, didn't have the, what I like to call the social capital of understanding how schooling in computer science works, or even college in computer science works, what that sort of means. And so it started for me then, because I think especially with high schoolers, it's even more important because they have to be there. And we are doing our best to coach them. And it's, it's definitely harder to be both figuring out who you are as an adult, not that college students to figure themselves out either, but it's just a different sort of stage in their mental development. So it started then. So I mean, I would say it definitely started with when I was in high school. In college, I felt the same sort of pressures, even at Maryland, where I would say the program now is a lot more diverse than when I was here. I started, I'm gonna feel old, 10 years ago. Actually 11 years ago. And, the rebuild didn't exist. It was all CSI. It was just a smaller program, but there wasn't the diversity that there was. So anyway, back to what I was saying, but yeah, it definitely played a factor. And I just love teaching students who are struggling with the initial concepts, because I think that's so foundational, because I often saw people that if I talked to them about being in computer science, they were like, oh, I could never do that. And 80 to 90% of the time they would say that they couldn't do it was because they had a bad teacher or a bad experience. And so if I could do my part to make sure that they're making a conscious decision and not do computer science and not that just they had a horrible experience, that was important to me.
Yeah.
Valuable.
One thing I also noticed, like when I was taking lower level classes coming in, where there were still students who, like there are some students who have absolutely no experience at all, coding at all. And then there are some students who still come in with experience and they can understand things a lot faster. How do you deal with that discrepancy and kind of like keep pacing going? Because I think, you know, when you start a class, like probably the first project's pretty simple. And then probably like by the time you're getting like project 2, project 3, when you get like to a raise. I feel like that's like the point of divide. How have you like seen that over time? Has it changed? How do you like keep pacing?
I mean, it's changed a lot. I'd say like computer science at the high school level has advanced a lot to the point where a vast majority of students have experience. I've talked to Nelson in the past about this, and I've done my own surveys as well, but it sometimes could even be like 60 to 70% of the students coming into 131 in my classes have some sort of experience. Could be Python or like HTML, CSS, but a lot of them are taking AP Computer Science A, which is, you know, a pretty direct equivalent to 131. And so I think what I try to focus on is asking why for a lot of things. So trying to explain, like, why are we learning about arrays? What's important about them? Well, if you think about, you're trying to keep track of an Etsy storefront. If I want to have like 100, you know, inventory items, am I really going to name 100 variables and have it, you know, item 1, item 2, item 99, like all of these things, and justifying these things? Because I think when you often learn it in high school or previous experience, you're just trying to learn to get into grade and get into college. And it isn't coming out of the sort of computational thinking background and more of the, how do I get this done so I can get the grade and then move on to the next thing, which is valuable, but it's not what you need to be a software developer in many cases. And so focusing on the why, I think, is important in the structural things. Like, for example, in high school, they'll never teach you about memory maps. And I know memory maps is everyone's favorite thing to talk about in 131 and 132. But that's something that I think is really important as well, to understand the foundational stuff behind what you're doing, because I think that's what makes a computer scientist as well. And then other things that I've done, like last semester, I piloted running different tiered discussion sections. And I don't mean by ability, because I think everyone is able to succeed, but tiers in the sense of what your experience level is. And so we had students based on a pre-survey and a pre-test, you know, you're in the little to no experience, moderate experience, high experience, and tailoring the discussion sections based on that. Ultimately, lecture, everyone's going to have a similar experience, but if we can have those smaller touch points be a little more valuable to and be more scaffolded to the individual people, that's going to be much more meaningful. And so right now I'm actually currently writing a paper to talk about whether it was effective or not, and I'm using that to sort of decide if I'm going to keep doing it. But I think it'll be a constant process, because we're going to continue to see that happening, because more and more people are taking it, or computer science, earlier and earlier. Definitely. And we don't want to have the inequitable experience of those people who don't have experience getting, you know, a much worse experience than those who have a lot of experience or even any experience. Yeah,
certainly. Also, what you were saying about applications, I think CS is such a diverse field like that. There are so many other like engineering majors that seem purely computational, and the applications kind of stay within the breadth of whatever the major cloud is. But I think like principles in CS, like you can use it for anything like Etsy or like whatever, like whatever product you want to develop. So I think putting things in the broader scheme makes like even motivation increase, right? Like people like want to be creative, like make their own stuff.
And I like that you're bringing up creativeness as well, which is I think something that's really lacking in the introductory courses that, you know, I'm hoping to continue to add more open-ended projects that are harder to grade, but it is a little bit easier for you to take your other experience or your other interests and bring them into a class, which right now it's a very vanilla, like straightforward, you do the projects and that's it. But I think that's another way we can counteract some of those issues as well. You
could definitely make them be more creative by letting them have extra credit by coming to a hackathon. Like,
I mean, I always like to give extensions for hackathons, so I try not to penalize people for doing that. So I do give extensions for Technica and BitCamp if it falls on an assignment due date. So
as long as we send you a picture.
Yes, that's what it was.
I went to BitCamp one time, took a picture. ate food, and then I left.
I mean,
I was like, extension.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you at least went to experience it, because I'll tell you, I don't know if this will come up a little later, but like, I think hackathons are a valuable way for you to find identity in computer science, where it wasn't until I went to, there was a hackathon called Demon Dash back in the day. This was before, it was at the same time as Big Camp, but it was the second one, but it was super valuable, and going to Big Camp was also super valuable for me. So yeah.
It's really making me think about how we can be more intentional in the ways that Technica actually is trying to also account for all these different backgrounds, because my team specifically, we do the summer program, and right now we're in the brainstorming stage for what's the curriculum that we use to help people create projects when we have people of all these different backgrounds and experience levels. So yeah, maybe I can brainstorm with you sometime.
Always happy to.
But yeah, I also see how your experience as a UMD student, also your experience in high school, has helped you really be intentional in the ways that you run your classes. So
it's good to be a bad student and now teaching, because I can empathize more with other people.
Should I be a teacher then? I'm a really
You're not a bad student, so
well.
Yeah, and also you're part of Breakthrough Tech. Like, that's a very big part of your role here on campus. So could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you've done?
Yeah, so it's a very open-ended job in the sense that, so my title is Curriculum Innovation Lead, which essentially means that I developed the program that Faith was in. So it was the Guild program, which is now going to be renamed to Tech Start, which is a little bit more of a straightforward name, and developing that. So it's essentially a 1-week program where we bring students who are somewhat interested in tech, hopefully solidify or convince them to become tech majors. So that's a big thing. We also partner them with industry mentors during that week as well, so they get some of that experience to see what it's like to actually work in tech. So that's one big part of my role during the summer. The other is just generally trying to improve the computer science department as much as I can, but not even just computer science, like computing as a whole. So I've worked a lot with the iSchool, Info College, Information Systems. We do a lot with geographical sciences as well, essentially any of the computing majors across campus. And so I've created courses. That's also part of the role that I've done. So the other class that I teach is Intro to Computing, CMSC 125. That's a course that I helped develop the syllabus for. Developed CMSC 115, which is women. It's a cross-listed course with women, gender, sexuality studies as well. So, that was one of the things I really wanted to do in my time here, is like, how do we bridge the gap between computer science and other departments? Because like you even said, computer science is applicable to anything. And so I think that's really valuable, especially for a gen ed course where it reaches more people than just our own students. So yeah, definitely. That's most of what I do. I mean, I also run workshops and things like that. I'm sort of the resident in-house instructor for Breakthrough Tech, which I love doing, because then I get to see more students than just the ones that I have in my class. Yeah,
you should host a workshop at Technica.
Please.
I would love to. I think the last couple of times I was unable to for traveling or something. Okay. I think last time I was when I tore my ACL. So I was not I was not in a good space, but yes, I would love to. I'd love to.
Yeah. And what was the course code again for the one that's cross-listed with WGSS classes?
CMSC 115. 115. Yeah. So, unfortunately, not to shade the department, I was not allowed to teach it because it's a smaller class, but helped develop the syllabus. But the person who teaches it, Jen Manley, fantastic. Used to work with her a lot in the past as well.
Cool.
Okay. To kind of wrap things up, our last few questions. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to someone who is considering dropping CS?
Don't do it is the biggest thing. I think, there's varying levels of why you're, like going into thinking about dropping. I'd say the first thing is reach out to somebody. That goes without saying when it comes to just your mental health in general in college. I think is super important. But reach out to somebody. The instructors typically seem really scary. I know I always thought they were really scary. I was even scared of Nelson when I had him. And it seems very daunting. But again, you're here for a reason. I also like to say you're paying a lot of money to be here, you know, whether it's time money or real money, but you're spending a lot of time here. So give it your best shot, and you don't want to have any regrets at the end. So reach out to people, talk to people, and there's what I like to tell my students, there's no one decision that will make or break you for the future that you're making right now. So you might be super ahead, you know, with a lot of courses under your belt. That doesn't mean that you're going to be the next Sergey Brin or whatever it is and, you know, be perfect in computer science. If you fail a class, that also doesn't mean that you're going to be a failure in computer science. Not at all the case. So start with that. Take care of yourself. Reach out to people. That's the biggest thing. The other thing is just reevaluate how you're studying and approaching these classes. A lot of the trick is just figuring out the game of the syllabus and how things work and understanding that structure. And so that's huge. So that'd be a second thing. Last thing is try to have a good support system around you beyond just the instructors. I know it's really easy to feel very alone in a program like this where you're teaching a class. I'm teaching a class of 250 students. I'd love to get to know all of you all, but I can't. And it's very easy for you to sit in the same spot, have nobody around you, just peace out, go to lecture, go home, and that's it. But if you don't have friends coming in, the sad reality of being in college is that means you have to put in the effort, unfortunately, to make those connections. So it's going to seem really scary. It's going to seem unfair that you're going through a struggling time and you're also having to like go to, you know, like events and do different things and things you don't necessarily want to do, but that's where you'll meet people that I think will be going through similar experiences to you. So between those three things, I think that's the best advice I can give, but it definitely goes a long way to invest in yourself when it comes to getting that support system.
Yeah. I think having a support system is so important, and it takes so much trial and error. I mean, there's like everyone says like you'll never stay with your freshman friend group, or like the first person you meet like might not be the person you 100%. Like stay friends with through graduation. And I think like there's like there can be like a toxic area of students within CS, and it's hard to like sometimes get out of that or recognize that you're even in it, and like questioning whether like maybe you're like the one who feels like a little bit different, and like it's like whatever, like self-blame and stuff like that. But like I know I felt like that, and sometimes like that will lead me to want to study by myself rather than like study in groups, because like I'm scared of, you know, saying something's an answer is wrong, and then everyone's saying like, oh, like I can't believe you wrote that, like blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I'm sure like people who are watching this like have had that experience too. And I think like no matter, this is just like kind of advice from me, but like go to office hours and find the TAs who are nice because it doesn't matter if you're literally in office hours for like 3 hours. I've done it before. Sometimes I've even just gone to office hours to like hear the chit chat around me and like, you know, have like kind of like just like the exposure, and you can like kind of get a sense for like who's trying to help you and like make you understand versus like someone who's like, oh, like literally give me your computer, blah, blah, blah. And then like that's that, and then you're like, oh well, I passed the test, I guess I'm done. Exactly. So I think that's like something really important to identify early on in the major, because if that pattern kind of continues through, it can be like you can kind of like put yourself into a pit a little bit.
100%. Especially, I mean, when you think about the real world, when you're working at a company, it's not that they're not going to give you an exam or quiz and things you're doing independently. More often than not, you're going to ask your coworkers, hey, I'm stuck here. How do I solve this? Or like, hey, I'm going through this tough time. Can you help me out with this thing? That's just how the real world works. So getting yourself to have that experience and, you know, really take in college life, because it's a once in a lifetime unless you keep going back to school, but like myself. It's really a once in a lifetime experience to be in a place where everyone's at the same goal and hopefully trying to help themselves. And there's of course going to be people who are not constructive and not very helpful, but like you said, put yourself in a position that you can find those people to be that support system. 100%.
So now we have a little fun segment. More exciting, or I guess not more exciting, but a little bit
more
exciting. Lighthearted. Who's your favorite coworker?
Funny, we're talking about being very independent. I also feel the same way often sometimes teaching at Maryland, where everyone's teaching their own course and like doing their own thing, which is very different from teaching high school, where it was like, you know, the people you're working with and you know, you see them very often because your classroom is your office and everything's like sort of together. Oh, it depends on what I am looking for. I mean, if I'm looking for like a relatable experience, Cliff is almost exactly the same age as me, and we've gone through similar experience. I remember Cliff's long hair when I was a student here.
It's been long
he was
for
a
that
year.
long?
I think he was a year or two younger than me.
Okay.
But I remember seeing him before I graduated.
Wow.
So yeah, Cliff, I'm very close with. I don't know. Nelson's always great to run into.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see. Justin is somebody I strive to be like, and maybe one day I'll be half as good of an instructor as Justin, which would be nice. But yeah, I'd say those are the top people. Not to shade all of my other coworkers. I enjoy all of you all, but those are people I probably talk to the most in the department. Yeah. But again, not to be too like teary-eyed. I do it for the students. The students are the best part. Y'all are the most interesting thing in my job. So yeah.
If you could teach any course here at UMD that you took as a student, what would it be? It doesn't necessarily have to be CS either.
Ooh, interesting. I love 132, so I'll do the cop-out answer of saying the class that I teach now. I think it's just the most interesting and helpful class for beyond the CS program.
Yeah.
Beyond that, okay, two things. One, I didn't take some sort of kinesiology class. Do you all know about those kinesiology?
Yes,
like
trampoline.
Yeah, they have like
Trampoline and karate.
Yeah, they have like just beginner jogging.
Yeah.
It just seems like something. Have you all watched the show Community?
Yes.
It seems like something at a Community where it's like intro to ladders or something like that. Like it's very random. That would be so fun. I can't teach it right now with my ACL, but I would love to teach it in the future. The second thing is some sort of music class. I took some interesting, not like music composition class, but it was like a class that was like, we learned about a new like a genre of music every couple of weeks, and then we wrote some papers on it and like talked about it, and those were super interesting. I still listen to that like type of music even now. And that would be so fun to do, because then I can just like bring in whatever in music I'm interested in, then we talk about it and then talk about the real world implications. It's just so fun. So that would be my choice.
Do you think your ACL might be healed by Technica? Maybe you can do a trampoline workshop?
100%. Yes.
Oh my God.
I don't know about trampoline.
Trampoline.
I can coach people to do trampoline. I'd love to do that. I should be good by then. Yeah.
Yes. Think about it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. What are the CS stereotypes that you think are true, and what do you think are not true? We can start with the ones that you think are true.
The stinkiness, unfortunately, is tough. And it's all, you can interpret this how you like, but it's all 5 floors. So it's not just on the students. That's one thing I'd say.
Once a CS kid, always a CS kid.
Yeah. The second thing is how competitive CS students are, which I feel like is very toxic. You're not competing against anybody.
Yeah.
You're really just competing against yourself. That's another thing. The third thing I think is being able, like, I think often when you're sitting in front of a computer or you're only interacting with people online, you lose some of the personableness that I think you need for a lot of positions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What I like to tell my students is like, when you're getting hired for a position, it's not just for your technical ability. They actually want to be able to work with you and like you as a coworker as well. So I think that's important as well. I've met a lot of students who are very personable and much more outgoing than I am, but I definitely seek out places where you can work on that. Things I don't think are true, that CS students aren't like well-rounded. I feel like a lot of CS students are very well-rounded and have their own other interests or other things. They just don't feel they should talk about it in a CS course and stuff like that. What's another one? Unfortunately, a lot of them are true. Trying to think. I don't know. Those are the only ones that really come to my mind. Okay, last thing I'll say, mostly because Casino Night was last week. Hopefully this doesn't make this, this might be evergreen, but Casino Night was last week. And I feel like CS students are pretty fashionable if they need to be. So that's always nice as well.
Yes. That's very nice.
Yeah, I was definitely guilty of wearing only free t-shirts when I was in college, and my wife put an end to that. And so,
Did they go in the trash? Where are they now?
They are donated or dog clothes. if they need them. Yeah.
That's really cute.
Yeah. But yeah, those would be my choices, I think.
Okay.
And then finally, for your exams, usually on the first page, you ask for people to make a drawing for extra credit or maybe 1 or 2 points. What was your favorite extra credit drawing?
Oh, there's been a lot of good ones this year, mostly because of my saga with hurting myself playing soccer. I told my students recently that, so I had ACL surgery to correct my ACL like a month or like 5 or 6 weeks ago. And I came back to see them the day of the exam, and unfortunately I almost slipped and died in the shower that morning. And so I told them about it, that I was like, we almost didn't have an exam, and you all also probably almost got all A's, because I don't know what the protocol is if I die, what's gonna happen then. But anyway, I had a lot of students depict me slipping, which was very funny to me. Thankfully not like, they were just like stick figures, but I thought it was really amusing. There's that. I've gotten a lot of like, I'll ask the question and then somebody will say no you, where it's like I don't know, it's just to me it's kind of funny. And then
like if they don't know the answer.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That, or the last one is I think the portraits are always amusing, either of TAs or myself. Those would probably be some of my favorites, but definitely recently the hurting myself has been, I think, giving them a lot of content.
Do you have any pictures of them?
I do, yeah, because
Okay,
I share them with the students,
and then we can put them on the screen.
Yes,
We'll definitely do
we'll
that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pick my favorites and send them to you all.
Perfect.
That's so funny. Do you still have them, or just the pictures?
I take the pictures and I have them like, I mean, they're obviously on grade scope and stuff like that, but yeah.
Oh,
I still have
true.
them. But I take a picture of my favorites and then I post them in the slides after the exam and we look at them as a group, which I think is fun. Yeah.
It's a nice little postmortem.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Well, and with that, I think we are closing up our time. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming out and having this conversation with us. You said a lot of really important things and very meaningful things that I think everybody should just be reminded of every single day. So thank you. And with that, do you want to say goodbye to the camera?
Goodbye, camera. But also, even if I don't know you, if you ever want to chat about stuff, just find me or send me an email. I'm not the greatest at email, but I will respond eventually. But yeah, thank you all for having me. I really enjoyed the pleasure of being here.
You had a great
Elias.
conversation. Very personable.
Thank you. I appreciate
Very
it.
human.